Hello, my fellow pattern peeps. Today I'm going to show you how to turn a top pattern into a dress pattern, and that way you can get more mileage out of the patterns that you already have and love. So if you have a top pattern that you think would make a cute dress, stay tuned and I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. If you don't know me, welcome. I'm Sarai and I'm the founder of Seamwork, a community that's all about helping you make more time to sew. We have hundreds of patterns, resources, and a really supportive community over at seamwork.com. Okay, so let's get to it. Here's what we're going to cover in today's video. What top patterns can easily be turned into a dress and which ones can't, how to decide on the right length, how to know how much extra fabric to buy, how to alter your pattern so that it fits at the hips, and how to add more shaping if you want it. All right, so let's first talk about choosing a pattern. So I used the Seamwork Pfeiffer pattern, which I think is a great choice for something like this, and we'll talk a little bit about why. And then I also had this gingham in my stash that I got for I think $2 a yard, something like that. It's actually Pioneer Woman fabric. I didn't know Pioneer Woman made fabric, but apparently she does. I found it at the fabric store, I bought it, I had it in my stash, and I thought it'd be perfect for this. I was really inspired by this 2017 Creatures of Comfort collection that I've had on my Pinterest board for like years, probably since 2017. I just thought it was so pretty and it was a perfect excuse to do something similar. So when you're looking for a pattern, you want to choose something that's going to extend past the waist, first of all. So you don't want something that ends right at the waist for the technique we're going to do today. You also want to look for something that's a little bit loose fitting. So what you're looking for are side seams that kind of go out towards the hips, not in. And then later in the video, I'm going to show you how to add a little bit more shaping in. So if it ends up that it's a little bit too loose for you based on your top, I'll show you how to add a little bit more shaping. All right, so once you have your pattern picked out, the next step is to figure out how long you want your final dress to be. So there are a couple ways you can do this. The first way you can do this is if you've already made it up as a top in the past, you can just try that on and then measure from the hem of that top down to where you want it to be. And the second way you can do this, which is really easy, is just to take the pattern piece, hold it up to your body, you can pin it to your clothing so it's roughly in place, and then just measure again from the hem to where you want it to be. I really wouldn't worry about getting the perfect length at this point, so you can always shorten your dress once you have it roughly where you want, so just make it a few inches longer than you think you might want it, and then you can adjust from there. So with a Pfeiffer, for example, I knew I wanted a kind of a short length, but then when I tried it on after I finished the whole dress, it was a bit longer than this, and I realized that with all that was going on here, the ruffles, the loud print, the bright color, it looked a little cray-cray, so I ended up shortening it just to make it a little less overwhelming. So let's talk about buying fabric. The first thing to do is check if your pattern pieces are cut on the fold. All right, so if both pieces are cut on the fold, like so, you have the front and the back on the fold, you're going to need to double the length that you're adding because you're going to add length here and you're going to add length here. So you'll need twice as much total fabric length. Now, if the pieces are cut side by side, so this one's cut on the fold and this one is cut too, you'll only need one fabric length in that case because you're going to be adding length here, but you're also going to be adding length here and they're side by side. So what I'd say is just study the layout and kind of take a look at it, and that'll help you to determine exactly how much you need. You just need to kind of visualize it a little bit. Okay, so what we're talking about today is a trapeze or an A-line style dress, so just a very simple shape. And I'll talk in a minute about shaping. All right, so the first thing you want to do is lay your pattern out on another piece of paper, something larger, because you're going to be redrawing the pattern piece and extending it to make a dress pattern piece. Now you're going to trace your pattern piece onto the second piece of paper, and then what you're going to do is you're just going to extend this side seam. So you can take a ruler and just extend it out to the length that you want. Next, you'll need to draw the hem in. So what you can do is just slide your pattern piece down to the hem and use that as a guide to redraw your hem. And you can take a curved ruler, match it up with the hem, so you have a nice curve that matches the curve of your hem, and use that to draw in that little gap. All right, so now I've done that for the back pattern piece, and I'm going to do the same steps for the front. All right, so the next thing we want to do is measure on our pattern pieces to figure out where our hips are going to hit. And the reason for that is that your hips are usually one of the widest parts of your body, so you want to make sure that you have enough movement there. You have enough room in your clothing to move around and, do a little dance. So the first step is to measure your body to figure out where your hip is in relation to your shoulder. So just take a measuring tape and measure from your shoulder, the shoulder joint here, so that's known as the low point shoulder, down to your hips. So write that measurement down, and you should also write down your hip measurement. So again, this is where your hips are at their widest. So you want to do the same thing on the pattern. The first thing you need to do in order to do that is draw in the seam allowance on the shoulder, because you don't want to count that part. So I'm just going to draw it in here. And again, these patterns are not to scale, they're just for demonstration purposes. Okay, so now I can measure from the shoulder down to where my hips are. And that's based on that measurement that you already took. Once you have that in the right place, just draw a straight line across where your hips are. You want to do that on both pattern pieces. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we want to measure our hips against this measurement here on the pattern. But there's one more step. Again, you don't want to count that seam allowance because that's not going to be in your final garment. So we're going to draw in our seam allowance. You don't need to draw in the whole seam allowance all along the side seam. You just need to measure it right at that place where your hips are. And just draw a little line there. So on your pattern piece, it's probably going to be a 5/8 inch seam allowance. Again, these patterns aren't to scale. All right, so we've got our hip line drawn in. We've got our seam allowances in there, so they're not counted. The next step, we want to measure both of these from that seam allowance all the way to the front. Okay, so once you've got those two measurements, you want to add them up and then double them. You can just even fold your measuring tape over like this, if you want to do the math, and get your final measurement. All right, and then you want to compare that measurement to your actual hip measurement. And this is the key part. You want to have at least 3 inches of ease. So that means a difference between those two measurements of at least 3 inches. And that is pretty good kind of ballpark for a dress of this shape. If you're doing a more fitted shape, then in that case you can go with less ease. You could go with 1.5 to 2 inches ease, definitely not any less than that. But 3 inches is a pretty good starting place for a dress in more of an A-line shape. All right, so you might be asking, Sarai, what do I do if there aren't 3 inches of ease? Well, let me tell you. In that case, what you want to do is just add in that extra ease that you need. So if it's 1/2 inch, let's say, we'll add that in right at the hip line here. And remember that if you're adding 1/2 inch here, that's going to be 1 inch total because you have 4 quadrants going around your body. And once you've done that, you can simply redraw your side seam, making sure you get a nice smooth curve. So if your side seam has a little bit of a curve to it, you can use a curved ruler just to match up those curves. And of course, you'd want to repeat that on the front piece. And here's another little tip. If you do mess up when you're drawing in lines, don't worry. If your ruler slips or whatever, just draw a little squiggle through the wrong line so you don't accidentally cut on that line. So if you just want a little bit more shaping at the hips, the easiest way to do this is to take a pattern that you have that you already like, and you want a shape that's similar to that, and just use that to redraw the hip curve along your pattern piece. So you'd be following the same steps we just went through, but you take that extra step to just kind of redraw that hip curve. Another thing you can do is add fisheye darts. So that's a dart that has legs going up and going down from the waist. That's going to add more shaping at the front and the back if you add them at the front and the back. So basically that's just pinching out some fabric and drawing in the darts here. And if you want to learn more about doing fisheye darts, just let me know in the comments. We can do another tutorial on that. If you do decide that you want to add more shaping in one of these ways that I've just described, be sure to make a muslin so you can test out these changes and see what it's going to look like before you cut into your final fabric. And that's really it. That's a super simple way to turn a top pattern into a dress pattern. And I really think the fifer is a really great example of this. It's a really great pattern to use to turn into a dress. So if you're new to pattern hacking, this is a great one to start with. Some other patterns that I think will work really well for this technique are the Romy blouse, the Dara top, and the kit blouse. So you can actually go to our website and you can filter our catalog by type of pattern and just see dozens of tops. A lot of them can be turned into dresses. Let me know in the comments what tops you think would make a really cute dress, because I have a lot of ideas. I'd love to hear yours. And if you want access to all these patterns, be sure to check out Seamwork. When you join, you get access to our entire catalog of over 200 modern sewing patterns, from quick and easy tops to wear anywhere dresses to tailored blazers and pants. We help you to design and craft your own wardrobe. Membership also gets you access to Design Your Wardrobe, our popular course that walks you through a process for laying out a seasonal wardrobe that you can sew. Plus, membership includes our library of dozens of sew-along classes, and best of all, access to our private sewing community, including tens of thousands of members, where you can post projects, ask questions, and even find sewing friends near you. I hang out there all the time along with Haley and the rest of the team here at Seamwork, and I'd love for you to join me. YouTube subscribers get half off a Seamwork membership, making it an incredibly good deal. To sign up, just click the button on screen or the link in the description below to claim your offer. I hope you loved this video, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next one.